Walk into almost any gas station in America, and you will pass one steel cage packed with propane tanks without ever once wondering who owns it. Almost nobody notices that cage. Somebody is getting paid every time a tank gets swapped, and it is not the gas station. We stacked two of our deepest deep dives into one. Inside, the propane exchange business behind that one steel cage at every gas station, run as quiet route-based cash flow that hides in plain sight, and the gourmet mushroom farming business run out of one spare room, supplying fresh mushrooms to local restaurants every single week. Stick to the end, because the second one needs no farm, no storefront, and no culinary degree, just a dark shelf, clean bags, and a weekly route that quietly refills itself. There's a steel cage outside almost every gas station in America, the orange one. Tanks lined up behind the bars. You've grabbed one for the grill 100 times and never once asked the only question that matters. Who owns it? Here's what'll bug you. The last time you swapped a tank, somebody you've never heard of made about $12. Clean. From a pickup truck on a 2-hour route. That cage isn't a decoration, it's a business. A quiet, route-based business hiding in the most walked-past object in the country. Today, I'll show you exactly who owns the propane exchange cage, how the money really moves, and how a regular person could own one. Stick around. You'll never look at a gas station the same way again. So who actually owns it? Most of the big cages belong to two companies. Blue Rhino, which is owned by Ferrellgas, one of the largest propane distributors in the country, and AmeriGas, owned by a company called UGI, serving around 1.3 million customers across more than 1,300 locations. They lock up the Walmarts, the Home Depots, the big grocery chains. They drop a branded cage, they train the store clerk, they handle every refill, and they pay the store a small cut on each tank. It's basically a drop-in-service franchise. The giant owns the asset. The store just earns a sliver. Now here's where your ears should perk up. Those two giants do not cover everything, not even close. They skip the independent gas station out on the county road. They skip the campground, the RV park, the marina, the little farm supply store 40 minutes outside of town. Too small, too rural, too annoying for a fleet to service. And that is the opening. That's the whole game right there. A regular operator walks in exactly where the giants won't go, and there's nobody fighting them for it. Because here's the secret that Cage is hiding. It is not a store. It is a route. Restock it. Swap the empties for fulls. Collect the margin. Drive to the next one. That's the entire business. I call this whole thing the Cage and Claim route, and I promise you, once you see how it works, you're going to start spotting these cages everywhere you drive. Let me make this real with somebody I'll call Harry. Harry's an electrician's helper. He pulls wire on job sites all week and takes home about $3,917 a month. He's good with his hands. He's good with paperwork too because his trade already runs on permits and inspections. And he already owns a truck. One Saturday, he's filling up that truck and he's staring at the Blue Rhino cage by the door. And he finally asks the cashier the question nobody asks. Who owns this thing? The kid just shrugs. Some guy. Comes by every week or so. Some guy. That was all it took. Harry went home and fell straight down the rabbit hole. And what he found is the heart of this whole video. Here's the money part. When you swap an empty 20-pound tank for a full one at the cage, you pay somewhere between $25 and $35. Picture that for a second. You drive up with a dead tank off your back porch, you walk out with a full one, and you never think about it again. That's all you're really buying. Convenience. Now flip it around to the operator's side. What does it actually cost them to put the gas in that tank? A 20-pound cylinder holds a little under 5 gallons. Wholesale propane, bought in bulk, runs around $1.50 a gallon. So the gas itself costs only about $7. Add the handling, the driving, a little labor, and the all-in cost to fill one tank lands somewhere around $10 to $14. So do the simple math with me. They sell the swap for around $28. It costs them around $13. The store gets a cut, usually $2 to $4 a tank, and the operator walks away with $10 to $15 of clean margin. On one tank, that somebody grabbed on their way to a cookout. That is the $12 from the top of this video. Now it's real. And you might be wondering something. Why swap whole tanks at all instead of just refilling them right there on the spot? Good instinct. But refilling on site means The store needs a certified filling pump and a bulk supply line. That's heavy. That's expensive. That's a whole different permit. The beauty of the exchange model is that the host store needs none of that. Just a cage on the wall and tanks that show up full. You do all the filling somewhere else, on your own time. For a regular person starting out, exchange is the simple door. Refill is the advanced level. Start with the simple door. Now I haven't even shown you the best part yet. The part where one cage quietly turns into 10? Hang on. First, how does the operator even get a cage outside a store in the first place? Simple. They make the owner an offer that's almost impossible to turn down. I'll put a cage on your wall. It costs you nothing. You earn a few dollars on every single tank that moves. I handle every refill. You will never run empty on a holiday weekend again. And unlike the big guys, you get my cell phone number. That last line is the entire pitch. A national company physically cannot promise a small store owner a 48-hour restock. An independent with a truck can. Speed is the edge. Speed is the brand. There are really two ways to set up the deal. The common one is a commission. The host earns $2 to $4 per tank exchanged. At 50 swaps a month, that's $100 to $200 of pure passive income for the store. And they did nothing but let a cage sit on the wall. The second way, less common, is a flat placement fee, where you pay the host a small set amount each month, maybe $25 to $75, for the wall space. That one gives you more margin certainty. Either way, you own the cage. And that matters more than it sounds, because the cage is your asset. The store can't just swap you out for a competitor on a whim. You're bolted in. So, how do you actually land that first yes? Here's the playbook. You don't cold call. You walk in. Tuesday or Wednesday, mid-morning when it's quiet. You ask for the owner, never the clerk. You hand them one page with 3 numbers on it. Your commission rate, your restock guarantee, and your sell. And here's the clever move. The nationals usually pay a store maybe $1.50 to $2.50 a tank. So for your first 3 locations, you offer $3 to $4 a tank. You're not being generous. You're buying a track record. You're buying 3 stores that will vouch for you. And you solve their worry before they even say it out loud. They're scared of running empty, so you promise a 48-hour restock in writing. They're scared of liability, so you tell them your insurance covers the cage and they never touch a tank. Objection raised, objection answered in the same breath. And the pool of places to ask is enormous. Think about your own area, the independent gas stations, the corner convenience stores, the campgrounds, the RV parks, the marinas, the farm supply stores out in the county. There are thousands of spots like that across a single region, and a huge chunk of them have no cage at all, or a sad half-empty one nobody ever restocks. So here's the thing. You don't need thousands. You don't need hundreds. You need 8 or 10 of them to say yes. That's it. 8 or 10 little wall spaces and you've got a route. Now here's where it stops being a hobby and starts being a real income. One cage, depending on how busy the spot is, moves somewhere between 40 and 80 tanks a month. At $10 to $15 of margin on each, that's roughly $500 to $1,200 a month. From one cage, on one wall, while you're doing literally anything else. Now stack 10 of them inside one tight driving loop, and the math gets loud. 10 cages could bring in somewhere around $5,000 to $12,000 a month gross. Take out the truck gas, the insurance, the supplier fees, and a solo operator running 10 cages could realistically clear somewhere between $3,000 and $9,500 a month. Over a first year, with the route still being built, that often lands in the $25,000 to $65,000 range. From steel cages, on walls, that you have driven past your entire life. And this is not me dreaming on a whiteboard. There's a real outfit called Heat Source Propane, written up by a company called Upper Route Planner just this past April. When they tightened up their routes, they cut their emergency response time from 48 hours down to under 4 hours, and they dropped customer runouts by 70%. Now read between those numbers. Tighter route, happier hosts, more tanks moving, more margin. The operators who win at this don't sell propane one tank at a time. They build density. That's the difference between somebody with one cage and somebody with a real propane route. One is a side gig. The other is a small machine that quietly runs itself. And here's the quiet beauty of it. A barbecue tank sounds like a summer thing. And it mostly is. But those same cages keep moving in the fall and winter because people heat patios, run space heaters, fire up cabin stoves, and fuel RVs heading south. The campgrounds and marinas spike in summer. The rural and heating demand fills in the cold months. Build a mix of both, and your route doesn't fall off a cliff in October. It just shifts. Okay, now you're excited, so let me tell you the one thing that scares most people off. And then I'll tell you why that's the best news in this entire video. To haul propane, you handle a little paperwork. There's hazmat transport training for moving the tanks, usually a one-time online course. There's a fire marshal permit for each cage, typically $50 to $200. And there are some basic common sense rules about how the cage gets anchored and spaced from the door. Most people hear all that and quit on the spot. And honestly, good. Let them quit. Because every single person who quits at the paperwork just handed you a location. The license isn't the ceiling here. It's the wall around your money. It keeps the casual copycats out, and it hands the margin to the one person willing to fill out a form one time. Here's how to learn what fits your area. Spend one afternoon checking your state's rules. 15 minutes of searching online tells you most of what you need. It's a checklist, not a monster. And notice something. A cage itself runs about $1,100 for a big one, a little less for a smaller 8-tank version. See where that number finally showed up? At the end, after you already saw the income. Because the cage was never the cost. The cage was the door. A lean starter, a couple of cages and 40 or 50 used tanks and a first fill can come in under $10,000. Plenty of people start with a truck they already own. You source the used tanks cheap, from a local dealer or a marketplace listing. You check the date stamps, and you keep a loose eye on recertification because a 20-pound tank just gets requalified every 12 years for a few dollars a piece. None of this is exotic. The whole propane exchange business runs on a clipboard, a truck, and a tight little loop. So what do the first 30 days actually look like? Week 1 is paperwork and a map. You start your hazmat training, you pull your state's rules, and you spend a Sunday driving your zone, photographing every spot with no cage. Week 2 is conversations. You walk into your top 5 no-cage locations and you make the pitch. You offer a 90-day trial with a 30-day out, which kills their last objection cold because now they risk nothing. Week 3 is compliance and gear. You file for your fire permit, you order your first cage, you source 30 or 40 used tanks. Week 4, you fill those tanks at a bulk supplier, you bolt the cage to the wall, you stock it, and you hand the manager your number one more time. 30 days, give or take. That's the runway from couch to first cage stocked. There's a book called The Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco, and he says one thing that lands perfectly right here. Most people trade their time for money in a straight line. 1 hour worked, 1 hour paid. Stop working, stop earning. The wealthy do something different. They build a system that pays them whether they personally show up that hour or not. And the propane cage is that exact idea. That you can touch. The cage sits on that wall at 2 in the morning on a quiet Tuesday. Somebody swaps a tank, and you make your margin while you are sound asleep. You built the system once. Now the route works for you. That is the whole shift. From a paycheck to a machine. Now let me be straight with you because I'd be lying if I said nothing ever goes sideways. One independent operator built up a few cages over 6 months. Solid volume, feeling great. Then one of his stores switched to a big national partnership and pulled his cage with 2 weeks' notice. About $800 a month gone overnight. Ouch, that one stings. But watch exactly what he did next, because this is the real lesson. He'd been ignoring 2 campgrounds and an RV park because they were seasonal and felt like a hassle. That same week, he called them and placed his freed-up cage at one of them. And that campground turned into his single best location. Over 90 tank swaps a month at the summer peak. The national company couldn't be bothered to serve it. He could. And he wrote down one rule. The rule that turns a fragile little hobby into a real business. Never let one location be more than a quarter of your monthly volume. Build the second cage before you fall in love with the first. Spread out, and no single store can ever hurt you again. So what did Harry actually do with all this? He didn't overthink it. He did his hazmat training for a couple $100. He spent one Sunday driving his own county, photographing every gas station and campground that had no cage on the wall. He counted 14 of them, 14 open doors in his own backyard. Then he printed one single page, his name, a photo of a cage, 3 numbers, and his cell. And on a Tuesday morning off-peak, he walked into the first store and asked for the owner. Not the clerk, the owner. 2 of them said yes. He bought 2 cages, about 50 used tanks, filled them at a local supplier, and used the truck he already had. Month 4, his first real money showed up, around $550 net, while he was still pulling wire full-time all week. The whole route took him one Saturday morning. By summer, he'd added the 2 campgrounds and was clearing somewhere north of $3,000 a month at the peak. And here's the part that got him. Every new cage barely added any time to his route. The first cage was the hard one. The 10th one was almost free. That's the compounding nobody sees. By month 15, he had 10 cages. He was netting somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 a month, and the entire route took him 2.5 hours on a Saturday. He hasn't quit his day job. But for the very first time, the math says he could. Could you do exactly what Harry did? Maybe, maybe not. Your area might be wide open, or it might be locked up tight by the Nationals. I honestly don't know, but here's what is true for absolutely everyone watching. You could find out this week, for free, without spending a single dollar. So here's the one thing I want you to do. You don't buy anything. You don't sign anything. You don't fill out one form. On your very next errand, the gas station, the hardware store, the grocery run, just count the propane cages. And really look at them. Find the unbranded ones, the half-empty ones, the ones that look like nobody's restocked them in weeks. Those are the open doors. The host locations a sharp operator could win tomorrow. And if you count them all up and every single cage in your town is full and branded and perfect, then congratulations. You just learned more about how a real business works in one car ride than most people learn in a year. Either way, you win. That orange cage has been sitting there your entire life, quietly making somebody their margin one tank at a time while everybody walks right past it. The only difference between you and that somebody is that now you know it's there, go count them. A single bag of sawdust and grain, sitting on a shelf in a dark spare room, can turn into $60 to $160 of fresh mushrooms every few weeks. From the same shelf, that is not a homestead hobby. That is a mushroom farming business, and most people have it completely backwards. They picture hippies in mason jars. Wrong! It's one of the highest margin food businesses a regular person can run from a spare room. No farm, no storefront, no culinary degree. The crop is boring. The money is not. And the people quietly winning at it aren't selling to you. They're selling to the restaurant down your street. So let's actually answer the question. How much can a spare room of mushrooms really make? And what does the path look like from one bag to a real weekly route? I'm going to walk you through all of it. The grow setup, the 3 ways people sell, the real numbers from a real operator, the one mistake that wipes out a batch, and the dead simple fix, and a 30-day plan to your first sale. Stick around, because the part that changes everything is how the money refills itself. Meet Harry. Harry's a Finnish carpenter. He runs a one-man trim and cabinet shop in a smaller town, and he clears about $4,517 in a good month. Some months a lot less. He's not broke. He's just tired of his income stopping the second he puts the tools down. One slow November, Harry read a little book called The $100 Startup by Chris Guillebeau. The whole idea is simple. You don't need much money to start. You just need to sell something people already want. And Harry kept circling the same thought. Every nice restaurant in his town buys mushrooms. Every single week. So who actually grows them? Here's what almost nobody tells you. Demand for gourmet mushrooms is not some tiny niche. Industry trackers put the specialty mushroom market around $9.5 billion, and it's climbing toward $18 billion over the next decade. Restaurants want them. Specialty grocers want them. Wellness shoppers want lion's mane by the bag. That tide is rising under you, not against you. And look, none of these numbers are a promise. They're what real growers report, and what the simple math allows. Treat this as a map, not a guarantee. But here's the real reason this works. Freshness. The villain in this whole story is the distributor. When a restaurant orders oyster mushrooms from a big supplier, those mushrooms are often 3 to 7 days old by the time they reach the back door. And yours, 12 to 36 hours old, picked that morning, grown 20 minutes away. Chefs taste the difference instantly, and they'll pay $2 to $6 a pound more and never look back. That premium isn't something you have to negotiate. It's baked in. I call the whole model the standing order shelf, and we'll come back to why that name matters. Let's talk about the actual grow, because it's simpler than you think. Oyster mushrooms and lion's mane don't need sunlight. They need a dark, humid corner and clean bags of substrate. Substrate is just the food. Hardwood pellets, straw, even spent coffee grounds. You pack it into a bag, sterilize it, add a little grain spawn, and seal it. Then you wait. White, fuzzy mycelium spreads through the bag over a couple of weeks. Move it into a humid fruiting space, and the mushrooms pin and grow in days. A spare closet, a basement corner, a 4-foot patch. That's the whole farm. From sealed bag to harvest is roughly 3 weeks, and then you do it again. Boring. Repeatable. That's the point. Now here's the part that flips a switch in your head. That bag that cost about $10 to fill? One oyster bag grows 5 to 10 pounds of mushrooms across a couple of flushes. At $12 to $16 a pound, that's $60 to $160 from a single bag. The bag paid for itself 8 times over. And the chef will reorder on Friday. The $10 was never a cost. It's the cheapest seed money in the food world. Lion's mane yields less per bag, but it sells for nearly double, so it earns its spot in the mix. If this still sounds made up, meet a guy who actually did it. His name is John Findlay. There's a great profile of him on Northern Ontario Travel. Findlay started growing mushrooms in a trailer, then moved the operation into a small backyard facility. Today, he grows around 50 pounds a week across 15 varieties: oyster, lion's mane, blue oyster, shiitake. His first restaurant accounts came the old-fashioned way. He set up a market stall, chefs walked past it, and he handed out free samples. Places like Embers on the Ridge and Arturo Ristorante said yes, and the standing orders started. Now he's aiming for 100 to 300 pounds a week. He's not a corporation. He's one focused person who started in a trailer, and he isn't alone. A small Ontario grower listed on a farm directory called Nature Lion, Mikey's Gourmet Mushies, runs a quality over volume operation. They hit nearby farmers markets and sell wholesale to restaurants without paying big city rent. Same playbook, spare space, fresh product, weekly buyers. So how do you turn a shelf of mushrooms into actual income? There are 3 roads, and one of them is the quiet winner. Road 1 is the farmer's market. This is your fastest first dollar. You set up a table with 15 to 25 pounds, price it at $12 to $18 a pound, and a good Saturday sells out in a couple of hours. $200 to $400 in a morning. Cash in hand, no waiting. The catch is weather, and you have to physically be there every single week. Road 2 is grocery and specialty retail. You package your mushrooms with a label and supply a local health food store or co-op on a standing weekly order. The volume is steady, but the margin is the slimmest of the 3, and they pay you on a delay. Fine as a supplement, not your engine. Road 3 is the engine. Restaurant wholesale, on a standing order. And this is where the standing order shelf earns its name. Here's how it works. A chef commits to a weekly amount. You grow exactly that. You deliver it Tuesday morning, invoice on Thursday, and the chef reorders for next week. You never sell it twice. The order refills itself. One mid-size restaurant takes 5 to 20 pounds a week. Even the small end, 5 pounds at $12, is $60 a week. That's over $3,000 a year. From one chef saying yes one time. And here's where people get scared of the wrong number. They think, how many restaurants do I need? It feels huge. It isn't. Picture your own town. Even a mid-sized city has hundreds, sometimes thousands, of places serving food. You are not trying to supply all of them. You need 4, maybe 6. 4 to 6 steady accounts is $160 to nearly $1,800 a week in committed, recurring revenue. That's a tiny sliver of your whole city. You just have to go land it. So how do you land that first chef? Findlay's playbook again, and it costs you nothing. Grow your first 10 bags. Harvest your best oyster and lion's mane. Bag up 4 half-pound samples with a little card. Your name, what you grow, your phone number, and the words "weekly supply available." Then, on a Tuesday or Wednesday morning before the lunch rush, you walk into 4 restaurants. You ask for the chef. You hand over the sample and say one line. "These were picked this morning, 20 minutes away, try them this weekend." Then you follow up Thursday. That's it. That's the entire sales process. Now, the boring grown-up stuff, and I promise it's painless. Mushrooms you cultivate count as fresh produce in most places, not cottage food. That's actually great news. It means fewer hoops than baked goods. To sell at a market, you usually just need that market's vendor slot. Anywhere from free to a few $100s a season. Most growers also grab a simple food handler certificate online for $25 to $60 in an afternoon just to show they did it right. Check your state's rules. 15 minutes of searching tells you exactly which path fits your area. On the skill side, you don't need a degree. You need clean technique. North Spore puts out free online classes and growing guides, which is plenty to get started. If you want the full business build, a course called Grow Cycle runs about $297. It has over 120 video lessons you can finish across a few weekends, plus a community of 3,000 graduates. That's it. One small course, one cheap permit. And here's the quiet truth. That little bit of friction is exactly why your street isn't crowded with competitors. The people too lazy to sterilize a bag never make it to your chef. Which brings me to the one thing that actually goes wrong: contamination. Every grower hits it in year 1. You open your fruiting space and find green mold creeping across a chunk of your bags. If you've got a restaurant order due that week, you're suddenly short. It sounds scary. Here's the fix, and it's almost embarrassingly simple. You grow about 25 to 30% more bags than your orders need every single week. That buffer costs you $15 or $20 extra in substrate, and it ensures a $200 to $600 order. Sterilize properly, work in a clean still air box, never reuse a bag, and contamination drops under 5%. The one rule serious growers live by? Never grow a bag without a name on it. Every bag is spoken for before the spawn ever goes in. Now, watch what happens when you stop selling and start resupplying. This is the reveal. The reason the standing order shelf beats every other food hustle isn't the mushrooms. It's that a restaurant route refills itself. A market caps you at table size times market days. A route grows by adding accounts while the grow operation barely changes. Remember the $100 startup? Guillebeau's whole point was to sell what people already want, with no inventory risk. This is the purest version of it. You only grow what's already sold. There's no shelf of unsold product, no guessing. The chef's standing order is your forecast. Here's Harry's path and watch the math. Month 1. Harry clears his basement utility room, sets up shelves and 10 oyster bags, loses 2 to contamination, and learns the lesson. Month 2. He tables at the local farmer's market with 20 pounds and sells out in 90 minutes. About $280. His first real money. Then it happens. A chef who got a free sample texts him on a Wednesday. "Can you do 10 pounds of oyster every Tuesday?" That's account number 1. $120 a week locked in. By month 4, Harry's added 2 more accounts. A cafe and a small inn, both people he already knew from renovating their kitchens. 3 restaurants, a Saturday market stall, and the numbers start stacking. By the end of year 1, between the route and the market, Harry could be clearing somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000 a month on top of the carpentry. Add it all up, and that's roughly $15,000 to $25,000 in his first year, most of it landing in the back half. And he still swings a hammer all week. The mushrooms just don't stop when he puts the tools down. Picture Harry's Friday a year in. He's not hustling for sales. He spent 2 hours Monday night packing bags. Tuesday morning, he ran a 90-minute delivery loop. And now it's Friday and his phone buzzes. 3 chefs, same message, same as last week, reorder. The shelf in the spare room is already growing next week's batch. That is what recurring revenue actually feels like. Quiet, boring, reliable. If you wanted to start, the first 30 days are clear. Days 1 to 10, you watch the free North Spore classes and sterilize and inoculate your first 10 bags. Days 11 to 21, You let them colonize while you scout 5 restaurants and prep your sample cards. Days 22 to 30. First flush, first sample drops, first market table. By day 30, you've made your first sale and you've got one chef in conversation. That's a real start, from a closet, for the price of a nice dinner out. So here's the one thing to do this week. You don't buy anything. You don't grow anything. You just walk into one restaurant or one farmer's market stall in your town and ask a single question. Who supplies your fresh mushrooms and how often? That's it. Listen to the answer. In 2 minutes, you'll know whether the demand is sitting right there in your zip code, unserved. And even if they say they're happy with their supplier. Good. You just learned something almost nobody who dreams about this ever bothers to check. The chef down your street is buying mushrooms every single week. The only real question is whether they start buying them from you.